And we are live. Good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time you are watching this today. I'm Chris Trammel. I'm the creator, head coach, and chief strategist of Chris Trammel Coaching, as well as of the author Launchpad. And today, I have the privilege to be able to host somebody I have been speaking to for a number of months now inside of this Lifework Leadership Livecast. Now, why Lifework and leadership? Because I believe that your leadership is a function of what you are supposed to be doing in your life. What's going to give you that fulfillment? What's going to give you that joy? What's going to give you that congruency and alignment that you would do it for free, as they say, but it's always great when you could get paid for it. And today, the guest that I have is just going to knock your socks off. Now, I'm going to pause for just 1 second because we had a little bit of a tech gremlin sneak in there. So I'm going to make sure that I am actually streaming and the volume is coming through. Connecting to. No, see, that was yesterday's. So let's try it again right now. And the volume is coming through. We're working. That was yesterday. That's what I needed to see. So my invitation to you is always remember this. Check your tech, right? Like before you get that plane off the ground and you realize you're not recording, which is one thing I'm going to check right now that I did hit record. I am recording. Fantastic. With that being said, let me go ahead and introduce our guest for today. And what's great is on International Women's Day, I have 3 powerful women joining me. They might or may not be on screen, but it's really an opportunity to look at, like, how do we get to continue to forward that which needs to be forward, the conversations that are going to create something that doesn't exist in this world for the purpose of moving more women into leadership, moving more women into the positions of guiding our communities, like wherever that needs to be. And I know that our guest today is going to absolutely help me do that. She's got a beautiful profile. Let me share it with you. Lucy Faulconer is the general manager of the Being Profile and the Assessment. She holds a bachelor's degree in organizational psychology and has over 10 years of experience working with a broad range of leaders and organizations as a management consultant, trainer, and coach. She has thrived supporting large corporations shift their results through strategy. She's a professional certified coach with the International Coach Federation, the ICF. Shout out to all you ICF coaches. She's certified as an ontological coach through the Newfield Network. She is also a certified Engenesis Thrive coach, which we're going to learn about today. What is Engenesis and why is it a Thrive coach? And she's recently moved back to Brisbane, Australia, not Brisbane, Brisbane, Australia, where she was living in Argentina, which is where I first had my chance to meet her. So let's go ahead and add Lucy Faulconer to the stage. Lucy, it is a pleasure to have you. Did I miss anything inside of that introduction?
Hi, good to be here. A few things. One, I was living in Chile, but we did meet while I was living in Argentina for 2 months. So it was a bit of a... and I'm a mom of 3. So I'm a mom of 3 little children. 10, 7, and 5, and I think it's so relevant. One, because it's a huge role I play in life, and also in International Women's Day, to be able to share that, yeah, I do all of this, you see all the qualifications and everything, but I've done that as I raise my family and as I've been moving countries and cities to integrate the work that I love doing with the life that I lead as a mother, as a wife. Yeah.
Wow, Lucy, thank you for that. And thanks for anchoring us and part of it, who we are as leaders, who we are for our families, what do we do in our communities? Because I'm sure, do any of your children play sports?
Yeah, they different ones, of course. So my afternoons are normally taking one child to one sport and another to another.
Yeah. See, so you're a soccer mom, or you're a little flag football mom, or tennis mom, whatever you are, you get to wear the hat of mom as well. So yeah, very good. Okay, then let's go ahead and kick off. First, and here's what happens, everybody. I get super excited when I get amazing guests on the show. If I don't write it down and try and stay on script, this squirrel will take off. So Lucy, if I ever go too far from what I said we're going to talk about, masterfully bring us back to center, okay?
That's okay. I can dance with you in this conversation. No problem.
All right, easy question. I think it's an easy question. I remember my first introduction into the world of ontology, the world of transformation. How did you get started? For me, it was 2006 in the Landmark Forum. How did you get started with this world of ontology, transformation, and being?
Well, I studied psychology, and in that experience, you go through so many different paradigms and way of understanding human beings. And for me, one of the biggest things was that we looked at them a lot of the time. We looked at human beings from a pathology point of view. So in simple words, what's wrong with people, right?
Yeah.
And how do you fix them? Not all of psychology was like that also, so I'm making a big statement, but for me that really stood out. And when I got to the end of my studies in psychology, I learned about organizational psychology, fell in love with it because it was all about how do you support human beings that are in a workspace in an organization thrive, that they are in the right job, that they're for them, that they are working as teams, that they're getting the best out of people so that they can perform and get the results that they want for the organization and for themselves. So I worked as a management consultant for 7 years, supporting, bridging the conversations around strategy and business with the human beings that had to make that happen. And as part of that, I started working with coaches, and the first approach I had to ontology was through these coaches I was working with. And I decided to train as an ontological coach. So Chile, if anyone's out there looking at this, Chile is really one of the birthplaces of ontological coaching. A lot of the renowned coaches that speak about ontology are Chilean: Julio Laya, Rafael Echeverría, Fernando Flores, Maturana.
I know Fernando Flores, yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he's Chilean. So ontology is huge in Chile, and I got to do a program called Newfield. I did that for 10 months. I had just become a mom, so I had Anna must have been a year and a half when I started my program. Perfect place to be, because it really allowed me to challenge, well, who am I and how am I being in all of this conversation between being this high performing management consultant with being a mother and also wanting to be that in my life. So it was a really good moment to start noticing the assumptions and the beliefs that I was bringing in to how I was living my life and the decisions I was making, and really how in that moment not enjoying so many parts of it because of how I was relating to myself, how I was relating to work, how I was relating to being a mother. So that's how I got into ontology. That was the first program I did back in 2015. And then I haven't stopped learning, and I can share a bit more about that. But yeah, I haven't stopped learning, fell in love with it.
Well, there's something about opening the door of transformation ontology, the Socrates, know thyself, right? Once that door gets open, there's the pool for continuous education. Sometimes we might overflow that cup of continuous education where we forget that it's to then turn it into the experiential and to go apply it. But yes, we want to learn because it's they say that, great leadership is a never-ending quest for a mountain with no top, right? Like we just continue to rise and grow and pull others along. So for those of you that are watching as well, if I'm not looking, I'm writing notes down as fast as I can. There will be highlights from this because Lucy has already said gold nuggets that will carry the whole show. And my job, what I do is I listen to people and say, oh, that's a good one. Let's go ahead and unpack that. And you already talked about the essence of today's call is how we relate to ourselves. That's the first part. Then how do we how do we educate, support, and transform how others relate to themselves so they could do what they want to do in the world. So let's do some groundwork right now, Lucy, if we're going to use the language of ontology. Ontology by Lucy, what would you say ontology is? And then we'll do epistemology, being, and transformation. We could trade off.
Yeah, let's do it together. So ontology is the study of being, of existence. So what is real and what isn't real? So when you take an ontological approach, if you're looking at a human being, sort of what is it to be a human being? And well, in our work as coaches, what we're constantly doing as ontological coaching is trying to get to that aspect of being of the human that you're working with, to understand how that is driving and creating this ripple effect into their behaviors, into how they show up, how they experience life. So a really simple example is that if you're walking down the supermarket and you see someone in front of you drop a $10 note, yeah, if you're being honest, you're going to pick it up and give it to the other person. Yeah. So the action comes from how you're being in that moment.
Clear.
And ontology is the study of being, of existence. Yeah. Reality.
Perfect. Beautiful. I'll take on epistemology. I actually found it. I got a couple books here where we're going to play a game called Themes from Books and how it relates to ontology and since I like helping people create from books. Epistemology, the study of knowing, how we know things, how we relate to what we know. Because we're going to, in this conversation, move people out of the intellect as best as we can, because we know there's a lot of smarties out there that want to put it into a container, but knowing something doesn't always make the difference. And it is the application of the being with it. So epistemology. And how about for you, Lucy, you already described being. You want to take on transformation, or would you like for me to take on transformation?
Let's do it together. For me, transformation is that it's when you can't relate to yourself as you used to be. So you transform. So the person that you knew yourself to be, you just can't relate to that. So I always like the example of a butterfly. You know, when it's in a cocoon, it can't be that again, what it was before it became a butterfly.
Yes.
And you'll have it like, for example, becoming a mother. Yeah. I can't relate to myself as not being a mother anymore. I am a mother. I've transformed. And that happened in a moment when that baby was born. But there's other experiences of transformation when it can happen in time, and suddenly, gradually, and then suddenly you just know that you've transformed in an area.
So great. Beautiful. I'll compliment that. I'll add to that. It is actually perfectly said. You took my little butterfly note right there. The thing that I like to include is because in my experience, being in the back of the room, during the Landmark Forum, during Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within, his wealth program. There's also a demarcation in time when we could really pinpoint, I'd have to work at it to go back to a way of being. But from that moment, it's the go forth and sin no more. If we were to take the metaphysics of something, it's like, you know better now, and you've been shown better now. And here's the opportunity when you become responsible for that which you didn't know before. Take that on. Yeah. So I include that with transformation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we have so many examples of that. If you've been doing this work, you'll know, and sometimes you'll know it in people around you that you'll see. They'll suddenly come in the room and say, what's happened to you? Like, you don't seem like the same person. And they'll share some story of what's been going on for them and how they've transformed an area in their lives.
Yeah, really great. Okay, let's go ahead. And one of the things that I appreciated reading and seeing when I was going through some of the work that Engenesis does is we hear different frames, new framing of things that we kind of have a sense of, but then there's a new way of presenting it. And the word economy. So there's the expert economy, where people are selling their knowledge now. We're being hired for what we know, not for our degrees and the letters after our name. What is a purpose-centered economy? I saw that inside of the Engenesis platform. I'm like, purpose-centered economy. I heard green economy, but what's a purpose-centered economy?
Well, from an Engenesis point of view, Engenesis is the company that sits above the Being Profile. So Engenesis stems from Engenesis, and Engenesis believes in that the expression of our unique being is part of how we drive our economy. So if you look at it, is that it's not only that we can provide prosperity around building businesses, entrepreneurship, we can also express our unique being. So our essence, we're all here because we carry what we call this uniqueness, this part of us that only we have, and that when we express it into the world, we can create this ripple effect through the businesses we create, the ventures that we create. And a purpose-driven economy in that sense would be, well, how can each of us create something in the world that, yes, brings economic prosperity, but that brings that expression of our unique being.
Wow. What I wrote here is when people pay us for what we know, it's the currency, right? Currency is the trade of value for money, the exchange of money there. So I hear then that that purpose-centered economy is, what is the value of who we are? And Lucy, is kind of perfect time. I'm going to take the first one that you just shared. This is the Bhagavad Gita, everybody. And Lucy just modernized one of my favorite lines here of the Gita, which is, it is better to strive in one's own dharma than to succeed in the dharma of another. Do your thing. Get out there and do your thing. That's the success of it. Like, the message has been around for a while, and yet we still need to keep coming up with structures, systems, programs to deliver it to people, to hear it newly with new generations, new technologies. And so when as you just spoke right now, I'm like, well, it looks like Lucy jumped us ahead. She did a quantum, because that was one of the things I wanted to mark there, and you spoke that perfectly. What did you hear as I shared that back to you?
Well, I'm just thinking about the work that we get to do, right? And the reason that we're connecting today is because we both share this passion to work with human beings and to support other people to express themselves and to find that way of expressing who they are in the world.
Yes.
And when we get to work with people, we're supporting them to find how are they relating to their uniqueness, to this essence that they carry, and what is getting in the way of them expressing it to the world. Like, in the end, that's the core of what at least I do as a coach, and Lisa's there listening. I know that that's what we're doing. And that can then translate into them thriving in life, thriving in business, thriving in their jobs, thriving in whatever ventures they're creating for themselves. And I've come across so many people that are doing a job because that is what they think is the only thing available to them. And transformation for me means when they get to look at themselves and see that who they are, what they carry that is so precious in terms of their experiences, of their knowledge, of the way they relate to things, that when they get present to that, they can create new possibilities.
Oh, very good.
Possibilities that weren't visible for them before.
So now you brought in the domain of possibility. So we're going to dive into that one. I want to pause for a second because you and I have been going. Lisa, you've been great. Would you, is there something you'd like to contribute? Is there something you'd like to ask? Marnie, I know that you're there in the wings. If there's something, because Lucy and Lisa, Marnie released a book called Lead It Like Lasso, and there she is. And she also is working on creating a program where she is, if I understand it correctly, working on transforming individuals in the tech domain. So Lisa and Marnie. Lisa, you first. Anything you'd like to contribute, something you'd like to ask? What's there for you right now?
So I just like to add along the lines of what you guys were just talking about and what Lucy just said, that there is comfort in knowing that you're doing exactly what you were uniquely designed to do. And that comfort leads to fulfillment. And for me, I had put out into the universe last year that I wanted something to come to me that would help me with my clients. And 2 days later, I got a nice little message on LinkedIn, and it intrigued me because it wasn't a very powerful, strong message. It was very soft, and it spoke to me. And that's when I met with Lucy and started talking about the Being Profile and started on my own journey with the Being Profile. And I'm very close to becoming an official Being Profile practitioner. So my goal was by the end of this month, and it's going to be right on track to do that. So I use it with all my clients. It's a fantastic tool for coaches. It's literally a snapshot or an X-ray on what's going on within that person's being and where they have perhaps unhealthy relationships with certain aspects that they need to transform in order to be this more fulfilling life and better at leadership, better in their life. Yeah.
Wow, congratulations, Lisa, and thanks for that introduction. That's beautiful. When I heard that, oops, I'm sorry. So
no, so good. I love that Lisa's here, and I've to see Lisa share how this has made a difference to her. Like, and in the end, that's what we're here for. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Lisa, a comfort in knowing. I think one of the aspects of transformation is over time, it elevates our certainty. And as we elevate our certainty, our conviction is more grounded, if you could ground conviction. And that energetics of that being transformation that you're describing is really, after a while, they say people buy you and then they look at your content second, and that's who are you being. So really well done, Lisa. Thank you for bridging that for us. Marnie, amazing mom over in New York again? Maryland, that's right, Maryland. Yeah, how about for you, Marnie? What are you hearing? What are you getting? Because you're a leader at this level.
That is why I have a lot of degrees that would say as such, but I think everybody's a leader, so that's fair. So 2 things came to mind. One, I heard Bob Berg the other day say that the purpose of life is to be happy, and happiness comes from living to your core values. So it is not happy as in, I'm having ice creams all the time, although ice cream is pretty close to my core values. So like maybe for me, that's one of them. But it's the alignment with when you're being the quintessential, the ultimate you, that does bring you the most happiness. So that came to mind. And then if Lisa and Lucy haven't seen Ted Lasso, I could just babble for days on what, there are a lot of lessons in there that speak the same thing, right? It's not about wins and losses. It's about becoming the best version of yourself, et cetera. And that was always my philosophy when I was a teacher. It wasn't about, so I didn't say wins and losses. It wasn't about the geometry or the pre-calculus. It was about helping all the students become the best version of themselves. And lastly, if you haven't seen, what is her name? Kelsey O'Connor, graduation speech. If you just Google that, it'll pop right up in YouTube. And she talks about So she was a softball star in college. And she had a career-ending, nearly life-ending concussion. And as people would ask her what she did, you know, who she would always say she was a softball player, and she really had to reframe her identity. And she has a great line about when you introduce somebody, you shouldn't say what they do, but you should say what they are, you know, who they are, more of their being. So
Yeah.
those are the things that came to mind.
Marnie, thank you for that. Well, Lisa, are you a mom? I want to make sure.
No, unfortunately, I am not.
No, that's okay. There's no yes or no, but I got two moms here, and Marnie just spoke to something right now, and I think it's easier with kids than adults. When my son was little, and he was playing youth baseball, it was during the time when the Dodgers had a pitcher named Eric Gagne, and he would come running out from the bullpen, and he would just throw 100 miles an hour, 10 times in a row, strike out the next batters, and the game was over. And so when my son went to school, I used to ask him, who are you going to be today? You're going to be like a police officer, you're going to be a firefighter, you'd be like a doctor. Each one had a characteristic that he could own and adopt. And when he was on the pitching mound, if he said, I was Eric Gagne, I knew he was just going to throw the ball as hard as he could. Right? So the being, Marnie, that you speak of is powerful, even though sometimes it seems to be in the world of management, too much of a soft skill, it doesn't serve us, and it gets labeled under EQ, where it should be one of the first things we learn, and then mechanics after. You two as moms, either Lucy or Marnie, take it first. How do you work with being with your children so they could grow up and remember the superpower that it is for adults?
Well, I was thinking about this yesterday, and I've noticed moments of like high tension in the house, you know, like the children might be fighting, and just asking them, like asking the one that's creating the fighting, sort of, if you were being kind right now, you know, what would you do? How would you show up differently now if you were being kind? And it takes them a little bit to sort of like a double take. But when they get it, it allows them to get out of the conversation about, but she did, like he did, you know, that they're in there. And they can go down that next layer and say, well, if I'm being kind, none of this really matters. And that same example, when they've got to do something new that they're afraid of, if you were being courageous right now, like what would it mean to step into courage? And those little distinctions for them, I think, really, gets them out of the automatic pilot of the doing and into, well, who do you choose to be right now?
I love that language. I wish I had that when my children were younger. They're 22 and 24 now. So there's now, that said, in the nature versus nurture, nature is a powerful force. At 3 days old, my mother-in-law was rocking my daughter like she was trying to perform an exorcism. And she said, what are you going to do with this one? I was like, well, she is 3 days old. I thought we'd give her a chance to learn to walk and talk. And she's like, I don't think you understand. She's going to be a force to be reckoned with. So when you're told at 3 days old that you've birthed a force to be reckoned with, you better start thinking about your strategies, because I'll tell you what doesn't work on her is telling her what to do. And it's interesting because now at 22, she's very reflective, and she'll say, I see what you did there, Mom, how you taught us to make decisions. I said, that's because you wouldn't listen to anybody. So like, I had to help you help yourself because you weren't going to help me along the way. So one of the stories that I put in the book that actually on another podcast somebody called out about, he's like, okay, forget all the business stuff. I want to know your vegetable brownie ratio rule and how that came to pass. So here's the story. We had a volleyball court at my house. We had Wednesday night volleyball, Sunday night volleyball, you know, in a sand court. And it was always like a big party and mayhem. And one thing I never wanted to be was a nag, and the kids never wanted me to be a nag. But what they did also want was brownies. And so I said, all right, I have to give them the power to be, you know, who they want to be. So I said, since I don't want to be the bad guy, I was trying to convey my, core values, and you don't want me to be a bad guy, but I want you to be healthy. That's something I want for you. Do you want that for you? Right? It takes a long process to get there. Okay. So we agreed that if they had 7 vegetables, like 7 carrots, that they could have a brownie without asking me. And so this became the thing, and you weren't allowed to put 14 vegetables on your plate and grab. It had to be separate trips, right? I figured momentum would lose them at some point. But my friends to this day will come to a party or walk out of the house and be like, Miss Marnie, I have 7 carrots. I'm going to have my brownie now. And I'll say, like, you don't have to ask. You had your vegetables. So I tried to find ways to put them in control of their own destiny, because one of them in particular was going to take it one way or the other.
Very good. Yeah, I love that. And it is like, how do you go shaping that understanding for them of how do they want to show up? And I use show up because I'm trying to simplify it, but it's sort of, how do they want to make decisions? How do they want to lead their own life? But that you're giving them the autonomy to do that, but also the ground distinctions of this works, this doesn't work. One of the distinctions that we work with and that I love is freedom. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you have freedom of choice, but you don't have freedom of consequences. So you're free to eat all the brownies you like, but there'll be consequence to that. So there's certain ground rules, the rules of reality, as you call them, that you've got to bring into consideration. And then you have freedom around that, and you're still a human being. And there's limitations to that. So pick how you're going to use your freedom and pick wisely.
I like that.
Outstanding. Okay, you both said something, and you used the word distinctions, and I think that's absolutely powerful, because I know within Marnie's book there are distinctions that she's brought forward. Lucy, you speak distinctions. Lisa, you are practicing the world of the being distinctions. The one I just heard right now, because people always talk about autonomy. And I think what we're really looking at this level is equipped autonomy. Like, great, we'll go let you do what you want to do on your own, but can we at least equip you with the tools to do what you're going to go do on your own? Yeah. And I don't know if anybody else has said that. We might have said it here first, but that's what I just heard newly, because it's agency, right? Like the big thing, if we talk about that big book, kind of the Bible, it's all about agency. Yeah, go forth, but go forth knowing a little bit about what you're going forth to do and to be and to cause in the world.
And wouldn't it be great if they taught this in school? That we didn't have to depend on an enlightened parent or parents, but rather having this as a subject in school, because it would create a bunch of little humans that grow up to be understanding of exactly how to be kind and how to be in the world in order to affect everybody else in a very positive and compassionate way. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Lisa. As Marnie was a teacher, I was a teacher. I did 15 years. Marnie, you coached as well. You were a teacher and coach also. So we've got that. But let's take your smarts, all three of you, for a second. Move it from the being that we just saw with kids, and now let's go to the hard ones, the adults that get paid to be smart. What are some of the practices? And Lucy, you are lead guest here, and then I'll let the others share after you. What are a couple things that you do to start to interrupt the drift of the conversation and cause being?
I need to go back here a second, because we've been speaking about the being profile, and for me the being profile is this bridge between this conversation around being, essence, what it means to be human, with articulating it and distinguishing it in a way that people have language around it. So the being profile that was created by Ashkan Tashvir, and he's also the founder of Engenesis, what he did is ask himself, well, how can we distinguish those underlying qualities, so those ways of being that contribute to our effectiveness, to our performance, and to our leadership in life. So I bring it in now because that one of the main, like the first ways that I do this with adults is, well, let's distinguish first what it means to be human and what are those qualities that are at play constantly in the background, but that maybe you don't know how to articulate, you don't know how to distinguish, but that are there running the show. So for example, how you relate to responsibility, that is honoring the autonomy you have as a human being. How do you relate to authenticity? How you understand, how do you relate to the realities of matters in life? And then how do you deal with your own inauthenticities and the inauthenticities of others? Then the moods, for example, how vulnerability, fear, anxiety, care, they're always in the background running the show. So I believe that as adults, we know these things. Like once you show people and you distinguish it for them, they'll know it because they're living in this. But a lot of the time we're just so busy in the doing that we forget to articulate it. We forget to look at this side of us, and that just being able to have the language, to be able to see it, to be able to see what that means for you and how that's showing up in your life is already like a big part of the work that I get to do with adults. I do it with leaders, I do it with companies, I do it with teams. And it already creates that first shift for people.
Lucy, thank you. I gave you permission to bring me back like one of your kids if I got too excited, and you did it masterfully. Thank you very much for doing that and for illustrating. And yes, Ashkan, Tashvir, and the elements of our being and performance. So thank you for also acknowledging that part of the conversation. As you spoke, one of the things, the Jungian phrase, until we make the unconscious conscious, we'll continue to go about in life believing that it's fate, right? So part of it, like you said, what are the things that are running us in the background? Bring them forward so we could examine them and then do something about them. What seems to be easiest with kids,
with adults,
how do we cause this shift with adults? And you do a lot of work with adults at the leadership level and with tech, where they're really smart and they're engineer minded. How do you cause that?
So it's interesting because just today I was on a MSP community live chat where the person, they normally talk tech issues unless I'm on, because I have zero capability of talking tech issues. So they said, well, we really wanted to talk about communication and how we can help our team. So while you're here, let's talk communication. So I think what Lucy said about having the language and then giving folks places to reflect on using the language. It's not like they don't know it exists, but they're busy, so they don't take the time to reflect on it. So I think reflection is really key. And then just last week, I was talking to a friend and she said, oh, you said something the other day about team building without a purpose is just like a happy hour that not everyone attends. But if you do team building with a purpose, to be able to again, focus on the pieces that Lucy has talked about, I think that's a critical piece. You should do all of those EQ, soft skill, team building pieces as part, with an objective in mind, not just, oh, I think it'd be funny to know everybody's first concert, best concert. That's not really exactly why we were asking that question.
Lucy, Lisa, anything you'd like to share on that one?
Well, I want everybody to remember something too, and I found that going through the debriefs after the Being Profile assessment tool has put out all of the information, is that you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So you can, the real key is that you have to get someone to say that they're willing to be confronted with this information that they may have already stored in their subconscious mind, but they just don't want to face, because until they actually acknowledge and face that and allow themselves to be vulnerable in that moment with perhaps something that they need to make a change on in order to have a more fulfilling life and make better life decisions, they will not transform. If they're not willing to be confronted and see what the reality is, they will not transform. So that is a big key moment. I've seen complete differences from people that are really able and willing and wanting to make the change, and then those that are not wanting to make that change for whatever reason. Then it takes a lot longer to uncover what is it that's blocking them from allowing it, and usually has to do with something back in their childhood that didn't allow them to have these types of thoughts, and then having to break through on that first.
Thanks, Marnie.
Bye,
I'll
Marnie.
make sure
Thank
we
you.
get you. Bye-bye.
I love that, Lisa, because we talk about the exposure triangle in the work that we do. So it's the relationship between awareness, vulnerability, and authenticity. That is what allows us to get a clear picture of what's going on for us in the world. Yeah. So awareness is our access to knowing. So how we can see and how can we interpret in the world around us. Vulnerabilities that we're able to put our guard down. So think about it, like put our guard down in those moments so information can come in, so that we can be present with what is there for us to see. And then authenticity is how clear a picture do we get? Depending on the lens that we're using, are we getting a clear picture of what is there for us to see? So when you share these examples, Lisa, of people, well, seeing what's there, but not being able to take it in. I know so many examples that we're so used to pretending, and we've got into this state of pretending we're okay, pretending that we've got everything sorted. As a mother, like I can so relate to that sometimes you just pretend everything's working, but you get home and you can just see the loads of washing, the dishes there, that you don't have the food for the next day, but you've been pretending everything's sorted, everything's okay. That you can break those inauthenticities. You can get present in that moment and say, look, actually everything's not okay. But sometimes we carry these personas or these projection of who we think the world wants us to be, and we carry it for so long that we just don't know how to shed it. We just don't know the person that we are. And to be able to share that persona that we've built and we've invested in, right?
Yeah.
It can be so confronting, and it can take so much of our energy and our willingness and our care that it takes a coach, or it takes something that happens in your life to actually be able to break through that persona, and for you to actually get to find that part of you, that essence, that uniqueness, that authentic self.
So great, Lucy. And Lisa, thank you for sharing it that way. Because if we don't interrupt, and rather than confront, I like to use the word interrupt. Confront pulls the ego. It's like, come on, bring it. And then our intellect kicks in and hubris kicks in and everything else. So I invite people to, let's look at interrupting the conversation, the existing conversation. How can we create a new conversation, right? Word creates world. And what I also want the guests watching now, watching in replay, is we've done this work for decades. We are able to bring this as coaches because we've done this work. And sometimes, Lisa and Lucy, you both pointed to it right now, just because you understand some of the words that we're saying and you've read a book, you're not going to transform your team because you haven't done the work, you know, and you haven't maybe interrupted your conversation about how your team is and how they be. And because they're this way, you need to be this way. And now you've got a vicious cycle of two people being ways that they're not vulnerable. There's no awareness, it lacks the authenticity, and they're pretending.
And human beings, like, we don't get to decide the rules of how we are as humans, right? We do have this shadow side of us. Yeah, this shadow side of us that constantly shows up. So, for example, assertiveness, right? There's moments when you'll be passive aggressive. There'll be moments when you'll be aggressive, angry instead of assertive. So this will constantly be coming in. So times when you want to victimize yourself, for example, it's not that that won't happen to you because now you are a coach, you've done the work.
Right.
It's the speed in which you interrupt it.
Say it again.
So it is the speed in which you interrupt this shadow side of you that's coming in. You interrupt it and you get to choose, and you get to, again, own and honor the way you want to show up.
Yeah.
So we're going to be pulled. We're going to be pulled at these times in the day. Like I notice I'm being a victim. Like I'm saying, if all of these things would work, then I would be happy. Or then I would be more effective. I notice myself saying that. The difference is how long it takes you to interrupt it.
Masterful, Lucy. It is the speed. Any athlete knows that you practice for something that's maybe going to occur within 10 seconds. It's going to occur as a dive. You need to be able to have that facility in the moment of. But if you don't practice it and something hits you, a conversation, like I got an email today that got under my skin, and I had to be like, oh, that's all right. Oh, cool. Okay, because if not, we know that prior to work, development, and training, off goes that email. I'm going to tell them how I think. I'm going to give them my truths. I got to speak my truths. No.
Yeah.
Hold those horses back. Even if you could use the language that sounds transformed, you're still giving the ego disguise to run rampant.
Yeah. And we had a beautiful example of this in an accreditation I was running for new coaches coming into the community of the Being Profile, and she got the time zones mixed up. So she realized when we were like an hour into the program that she was thinking it was the next day, so she jumped on. And to be able to see her process of, I know I've messed up, I can go and beat myself up, I can be really annoyed because I'm in the car, I'm waiting for someone to, for their child to come out of soccer. And she could have gone down that rabbit hole, but instead she interrupted it. She forgave herself.
Yeah.
She chose how did she want to show up, and then was able to find the way back to her presence and show up for that workshop and own it, be responsible around what she messed up around, but then she was there. And to see that process, that for me is effectiveness.
Lucy, there used to be when we were little kids, I don't know if they taught this, and where was your youth at? In Australia? Where were you at when you were little? England?
In Chile.
In Chile. Okay. Yeah. They said whenever you caught fire, you were supposed to, do you remember what it was? There was a little mantra: stop, drop, and roll. Right, Lisa? Okay. In terms of ontology, in terms of being, it's stop, notice, let it go. You're either going to burn down the outside or you're going to burn down the inside. It's up to you. And I really appreciate you saying that, only because it gives me a segue that's one of the chapters when I released my book about life work, which really is what became available in my life after transformation and how I was able to create with words. One of the things about being is the opportunity to create, word creates world. And so then we get to declare who we are in the world and the difference we make. So as we get ready to land the plane, that's how quick time has went. Lisa, I want to give you an opportunity to share any last shares, and then I'm going to allow people to know where they could find you, where they could find Lucy, and how they could find me.
I just want to say that understanding and getting involved with the Engenesis community with learning how to be a being profile practitioner, with reading the Human Being book by Ashkan Tashvir, all of this, and meeting him. I had a little
Do you
fan.
have it nearby you?
I
Do you have
have,
it right?
you're
Hold
gonna
it.
see how much
Let's give
I've,
him a shout out.
let's
Oh,
see.
that's right. There we go. Perfect. Ashkan, I'm looking forward to speaking to you. It's beautiful.
Trying. And you can see there was a lot of tabs in there, so I didn't want to, I have a lot of tabs and I go back to
Well
them
used.
often. Yeah. It's been a life-changing for me. It's literally been life-changing for me. It's changed how I am being. And then also when you change how you're being and you become aware of that, then what you do is you are very in tune with other people around you and how they're being. You can walk around and go, "Oh, that person has an unhealthy relationship with the, vulnerability," or that, you become so aware of the people around you, which actually helps in relationships, and also understanding who you might not want to be around in your life. Yeah, it's
Really good.
been a real wonderful journey. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. I think Lucy, unless you're holding a powerful pose, she might have froze right there. It's a beautiful frozen position. I'm going to do a screenshot. Lisa, give me a smile because this is perfect. Hers is perfect. Taken.
Am I
that was-
frozen?
you were. Yes, you're back.
It was beautiful.
Your face is
I'm back.
glorious right now.
Hey.
So you could just speak with that beautiful smile.
Oh,
There you are.
Okay. My children are up. So that's what's happening. My children are up this morning. And they're probably using the internet. Can you hear me?
The challenges of a transformational leader from Brisbane, Australia to Long Beach, California.
Yeah.
All right, Lucy,
Is it working?
we're going to need to
now?
do a part 2. There's no doubt we're going to have to do a part 2. So how can people find you in the world? I'll make sure that your contact information is there, but I'd love for you to speak it so they know how they could hire you and do some work with you and Engenesis. If
you're a coach and you want to know more about the work that we're doing in terms of the Being Profile, how we're training coaches, giving them access to this framework, the Being Profile as an assessment tool for them, come to the Being Profile website. It's beingprofile.com or engenesis.com, where in Engenesis you'll find workshops that we're running, different trainings, articles, so much content there that is continually growing for you to dive into this world of ontology and the work, the transformational coaching that we do. And if you want to connect with me, you can write to me at lucy@beingprofile.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn as Lucy Faulconer. I'm sure you'll put it up there. And stay in the conversation, ask us questions, come and meet us, come to some of our events that we're running. We have one on the 19th of April called Let's Get Real. So we get real around relationships. Sign up for that. Yeah, you're coming. Yeah, Chris, you're coming. And that's Lisa. Right. So that's on the 19th of April. We do them 4 times a year. So come and join us.
Wonderful. Lisa, my neighbor here in Long Beach, who introduced me to Lucy and the Engenesis organization. How can people find you?
Well, I am Ladies Who Leap. So you just go to ladieswholeap.com and you'll be able to find out all information. There's even a button under the Leap Tools tab that you can make an appointment with me, and I can even tell you a lot about the Being Profile also. And the fact that now with my 12-week program, my Power Leap program, I'm required that the Being Profile is done in the beginning of that program, because that's a huge tool that I use with my clients now. And I would recommend, on top of Lucy, going to YouTube and following Ashkan Tashvir, because there are a lot of fantastic videos that he's putting together. There's interviews with him, and he's really breaking down in much more detail all of these aspects of being and how they can affect and enhance the decisions you make, your leadership skills, and everything like that.
So well done, Lisa. Good. Yeah.
Good.
Bravo.
Thanks.
And I don't work there. No.
Thank you for joining us, Lisa. I'm going to bring Lucy back to the front for a second. Lucy Faulconer, it's one of my most favorite interviews I've gotten to do. I thank you for the time. I know you had to wake up early in Australia to be here, and the kids are up. So I want to respect that. I look forward to when we get to do part 2, because we just like transformation, scratched the surface today. So
Yes.
we'll do
No,
another.
it's a pleasure to be here. So thank you so much for the invitation. I've loved it. I love that Lisa was here also, and that we could have a conversation together, because we could just spend hours here unpacking some of the things that we spoke about. So thank you, Chris.
Absolutely. And yeah, not only do we want to unpack here, but we want to unpack in organizations so those leaders can make a difference in their communities, in their organizations, in their homes, and continue to transform and uplift the world, right? Let's be that rising tide through the work that we do that elevates others. And I really appreciate the partnership that I get to have with you, Lucy.
Me too.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
all those women, all those women out there, especially today, finding their way, finding their courage to be themselves and to open up space in whatever they want in life, their careers, their families. So a shout out to them, especially today.
Beautiful. Yeah, I couldn't have had it better having you on International Women's Day. You are a force for good and a force for making a difference. I acknowledge you for all the work you do, and I look forward to the next time we get to connect, Lucy. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream now. Okay, bye everybody out in social land.